Because I didn't have a college degree, I'd gotten a job to be the new gorilla at Stone Zoo in Stoneham, Massachusetts. The suit I had to wear was something similar to what is seen in that one episode of SpongeBob. It was quite a horrible thing to see in the break room bathroom. I stood upright in the gorilla suit. I reminded myself of some ancient hominid species. I was Homo erectus before discovering fire. The eye sockets of the gorilla suit were a little wide, and it made me look like a gorilla with pink eye in both eyes. The teeth of the suit resembled that of a horse about to sneeze, but I could move them with my jaw, and sometimes I did when inside the gorilla exhibit. It was difficult to eat the fruit that the zookeepers gave the other gorillas and I, but I managed. I'd sit in a side of our exhibit, up against a rocky wall, sitting like I was posing for some Roman sculpture while I chewed with laborious chewing on a peach. The other gorillas didn't mind me much, but they didn't try to be my friend either. It smelled like a farm in there, and the musk of the exhibit was made even worse with the smell of my sweat from inside the gorilla suit. I had indeed pissed myself one day when the male silverback and I got into a shouting match. I jumped on my knuckles and feet as if the earth was my trampoline. The male bared his fangs and flung spit into my face. Some got through the eye sockets and into my eyes. He beat his chest and I thought he was about to rip off my limbs, but thankfully the zookeepers came in and broke up the quarrel. The worst part of the job was when a school came in on a field trip. "What's wrong with that gorilla?" the children would always point and ask. I was just minding my own gorilla business, slumped up against my favorite rocky wall while the male silverback and female silverbacks checked each other for bugs. "That gorilla is ridden with diseases," I heard the zookeeper's muffled answer from behind the glass. "What diseases?" a kid asked. "Mange, we think," the zookeeper hypothesized. "We took him in because he wouldn't survive in the wild." I sat there and listened. "I hope you feel better, monkey," one child shouted at the glass. I didn't look at them because gorillas aren't meant to understand English. Playing up the part of a diseased gorilla, I just looked at the straw and dung on the exhibit ground and felt sorry for my gorilla self. But the human in me made me turn my head to meet the gaze of the little child. He had a bowl cut in the tiniest of polo shirts I had ever seen. He was waving at me with his mouth ajar as if he hadn't learned to close it yet. He was waving at me, and for the closest of moments I almost waved back. But then I remembered that I was in a gorilla suit. His teachers shepherded him and the other children away. Later on that afternoon, after a lunch of bananas and peaches, a college-aged couple appeared behind the glass. They were a distant species of emo, and I could smell the unmistakable skunky smell of weed that had wafted up from beyond the barriers. "Oh my God," the girl chuckled, putting her hand to her mouth. "Look at that gorilla." Her boyfriend said something to her, but I couldn't hear beyond the glass. "What's wrong with him?" she asked her boyfriend. I knew I didn't pass for a normal gorilla, but why did it offend me? Yes, I was too skinny to be a gorilla. My arms weren't muscular enough, and my face was horrific in terms of gorilla beauty standards. I looked like the Grinch with black fur instead of green. There was another field trip the next morning, and my appearance made some of the children cry. They ran and huddled around their teacher where their shrieks accumulated. A horrible thing to hear muffled beyond the glass. It made me miss the little boy who had waved at me, the only one who tried to be my friend. I was getting used to this. I was getting paid for it, and when I ate Big Macs after work, nobody else in the McDonald's knew that I was in a gorilla suit just an hour earlier. It felt miraculous to be speaking English again when I ordered my food to the cashier who smiled at me. An hour earlier, I wasn't speaking at all. It was my job to erase everything I knew about the English language out of my mind when I wore the face of a gorilla. Of course, I brought the barnyard stench in with me whenever I had dinner at McDonald's, but the cashier never paid any mind to this because I was human too. She wasn't a gorilla. She was a cashier who could smile. Gorillas have no off days, only when the zoo is closed. I spent my morning standing in front of the break room bathroom mirror, looking back at a demented gorilla's reflection. "Am I you?" His eyes begged with a desperate inflation in them. One weekend churned my spirits, though. The little boy who had waved at me appeared with who I presumed to be his mother, and he smacked a piece of paper up against the glass. His face exploded into familiarity when I turned my head the disinterested way a gorilla would. He had drawn a picture of me and the other gorillas. Black stick figures with spiky hair, and there was my depiction in the corner. But he had drawn my likeness bigger than the other gorillas, and he was looking at me while holding up the drawing to the glass. Still, I had to keep my disinterested expression. When the boy and his mother moseyed on, I looked at the other gorillas and thought they should have been ashamed of themselves for not looking at the boy's picture he drew for us. The reason why I spent most of my shift up against the rocky wall instead of in front of the glass was because the zookeepers had suggested that I might appear a bit suspicious and unnatural looking up close. I lived far away from the public eye, an abomination in the corner. A gorilla outcast. I was getting paid for it. I was beginning to get afraid. When I came home and showered and looked at my actual reflection, I thought I saw my jaw display the slightest of contortions into the horse-like grimace that my gorilla mask had. I would go to sleep and wake up from dreams of being in a jungle, being in a circus, being an actual gorilla. Humanity receded into the gorilla. Reverse evolution. I woke up crying and sweating, and would go to work all the same. "Well," I'd say to the zookeepers while shuffling through the break room, "a gorilla's work is never done." Astronauts put their helmets on. I put the gorilla face on. A couple of weeks later, on a Saturday morning, the little boy and his mother appeared again. He had the same old bowl cut and his mouth dropped open in happiness when his mother led him to the gorilla exhibit. I don't know what compelled me to, but I hopped over to the glass. "He's here, Mommy, he's here," cried the little boy. He jumped up and down, but then he saw my face up close to the glass, and his glee lost the wind in its sails. How slowly did his expression become corrupted. How wide became my eyes while I looked at him from behind the glass. How wide my human eyes. How wide his human eyes. It was heartbreaking because I knew he wanted to take backward steps away from the glass, but couldn't because he was frozen in disgust, fear, and something else. Darwin discovering evolution far too early. I immediately felt sorry, but it was too late. The boy was too astonished to break into tears or beg his mother to take him away. "Wait!" I shouted. Everyone behind the glass froze. The mother picked up her little boy, his tiny legs moving like a rag doll's in the air, and she carried him away. The gorillas perked up. I turned to see them in their black, beady eyes that were so different from mine. I stood upright, surpassing millions of years of evolution, and bolted over to the door of the exhibit. I bursted out of the exhibit, through an air-conditioned hallway and out into the zoo. I was met with a cacophony of screams. I hurried past a balloon stand. Some kids let go of their balloons and sent them up into the atmosphere when they saw me hurry past them. Mothers and fathers picked up their children and dispersed in chaos. The employee at the balloon stand dove for cover. I dashed past different exhibits, running through the barnyard smells and violent screams of terror. People got out of my way. I ignored the frantic shouts of the zookeepers. I ran out of the zoo and into the parking lot, which was beginning to look like the aftermath of a NASCAR wreck. Cars scrambling to get out of the parking lot. The sound of car doors thudding shut attacked the day. Children cried. I swung my head around, trying to find the little boy and his mother. I couldn't bear the thought of having frightened them. I had to find him. I saw him in the backseat of a Toyota, in a car seat and looking out the window with dewy eyes all ashine with nightmare terror. His mother brought the car towards the parking lot exit. I hurried towards it, but it pulled out into the road. I ran into the road. Cars honked their horns. Cars swiveled to the curb as I ran by, running after the Toyota. The Toyota broke into speed, but I kept running. I shouted. Sirens wailed behind me, giving me more reason to run for my existence. To prove my existence. I waved my arms above my head, seeing that the little boy was looking out the backseat window over the trunk. I heard tires screech behind me. A car door thudded, and I kept running. Joggers on the sidewalk beside the road dove out of the way. The sound of pistols clapping was the judge's gavel of the day. I felt the back of my gorilla suit burst open, and I felt my back come into an immediate straightening. I froze mid-jog. The Toyota sped away with the little boy still looking at me. More pistol clapping popped. I heard a crunch in my left shoulder. My eyes bulged. Pop, pop, pop. Crunch. I watched the Toyota diminish in the distance, and finally the pain hit me, and I fell in the middle of the road, dead.